Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Westner. I'm CEO of Predictive ROI and founder of our signature event, Predictive ROI Live, where we bring together the world's leading experts in digital marketing and business leadership so that business owners can create phenomenal growth guaranteed. And I have the distinct honor and pleasure of being with one of our experts today. His name is Scott McKain, and he is an expert in creating distinction. Scott is also a multi-best-selling author, a highly sought-after speaker, and the author of an incredibly popular blog. So we have this unprecedented opportunity. Scott and I were able to meet up here in sunny San Diego to where I can try to pull the best of what he's got out of this area of distinction, why that's important for a business owner, and how do they create it and harness it into that full potential, and then be able to package that up and share that back with you so you can put that into practice right away for some amazing success. So that's what we're going to do, and Scott, thanks very much for taking the time.
It's a thrill. Stephen, thank you for having me. This is terrific.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a wonderful opportunity for us.
Same here. Thank you.
So let's start with the definition of distinction and what that means and why you think that's so important for a business owner today to have.
Well, one of the things that occurred to me, Stephen, when I was researching this and working with companies about it, is that the single most important question that any business should be asking today is how does the customer or prospect tell the difference between us and the competition? Because if there isn't a perceived difference, then why would I do business with you? Or it becomes just a price war. And so unless I can see some kind of meaningful difference between you and the competition, then as a customer, how do I make a choice? If we see that meaningful difference, now we are attracting customers. Being a big fan of Jim Rohn, the late Jim Rohn, one of the things that he always said was that success is something you attract, not something you pursue. And the aha for me was that translates to the business world, in that the customers we attract always seem to spend more and to be of higher value than those we've had to pursue and market the heck out of and track down and get a transaction as opposed to a relationship. And so the next thought for me was that, is differentiation enough? I mean, if I slap every customer in the face, I'm different, right? But it doesn't mean they're going to continue to want to do business with me. And so there were companies that were different, but yet I didn't feel attracted, even though I could sense there was something about them that was different. They could say, oh, we're different than the competition. Our logo is red, So it had to be more than mere differentiation. And that's where I stumbled upon the idea of distinction. And when I examined it, it seemed like the distinctive companies, there were threads that ran through all of them. Even there was a great diversity of industry. And so that's what initially got me fascinated, that there were three levels. There was the sameness level, picture the pyramid, this would be the bottom of the pyramid, where there are great companies that are making a great product, but yet at the same time, there wasn't anything compelling about doing business with them. And so they were always going to be trapped in, well, we're a nickel cheaper, or we're 2% better. Then you'd find those that had created some degree of differentiation. You recognize that there was a difference between them and the competitor. But then there were truly those ones that were distinctive, and they attracted us to do business with them. And some of them have almost become cliches that I get a little bit reticent of talking about, because everybody goes, oh, everybody talks about Apple and Southwest Airlines and Nordstrom's and and all that. But there's a reason. It's because so few are doing this. But it's more than being just great. And I laid what I was coming up with beside what Good to Great was coming up with, and I realized that great isn't good enough to grow your business. It's a different standard. And so distinction is the ability to attract customers, because what you do is so compelling that loyalty becomes assured.
That is awesome.
Thank you.
The ability to attract, love that. So one of the things I really like about your material too, that you teach and share and advise on, is those three destroyers of differentiation. So tell us about that and how dangerous that is and how to avoid that.
Well, no business sits around and says, we want to be exactly the same as our competition, right? I mean, no one's sitting around a table going, gosh, we're so excited, we are the same as everybody else. Nobody wants that. But yet we end up there. And so I started looking at what pulls us there? And it's almost a gravitational effect. It's a magnet. There are destroyers that unintentionally, the unintended consequences that we get pulled back to the pack. The three major ones. First of all, copycat competition. As we do what we do, if you and I are competitors, and I define that as, your customer is my prospect, okay. We're going after the same customer base, whether it's a B2B sale or a B2C sale. If I see that you have an advantage, you're doing something that is giving you leverage in the marketplace, my almost visceral reaction is I'd better do that too. I can't let you get ahead, so I'd better do that too. And that is copycat competition. You have a dry cleaners down the street and you offer a sale on shirts and you're cleaning shirts cheaper than me, I'd better cut my price so that you don't have an edge. Two things happen there. One is that makes it harder for customers to see a difference. Because what happens naturally in this Darwinian exercise that is business is you're looking at me as well. Just as I'm looking at you, seeing your advantages, the same is true on the other side. You're looking at me, and if I open at 7:30, so I'm easier for folks to drop off their dry cleaning, even though my price of shirts is higher, you go, I'd better start opening at 7:30 as well. So what that does from the customer's perspective is it makes us both the same.
Right.
If you're copying me and I'm copying you, it's pulling us down that pyramid back to that area of sameness. But the unintended consequence is it means that you and I are paying more attention to each other than our customer. In the automotive field, when I speak and work there, it's not real popular that I say this, but I think it's true. General Motors, part of the reason they got into so much trouble is they were more worried about Toyota than what you and I wanted to drive.
Great insight.
And so when you focus more on the competitor than the customer, you get great, now don't get me wrong, competitive analysis is critical. Every business should be doing competitive analysis. The question is, where is the primary focus? It's funny, I just got a copy of this yesterday, but Jeff Bezos of Amazon did an interview that's going to air on PBS in a couple of weeks. And he was asked about what the most critical mistake that most businesses make, and he said focusing too much on the competition. He said, from day one, I decided I really don't care about competitors.
Which is counterintuitive, isn't it?
I care about customers.
That is awesome.
It's unbelievable if you think about. Tim Cook recently said, what Microsoft does is really no issue for Apple. Now, that's not an arrogant. He's not dissing the competition, so to speak. I think it's just a philosophy that we care more about our customers and our products than we do about what other people are doing. And that's part of the reason that Amazon and Apple and others that we cite have attained that level of distinction as opposed to playing the game just like everybody else.
So copycat competition, that's number one, destroyer, and then number 2 and 3?
Number 2 is tougher competition, but that's easy to say. None of us think our competitor is going, "Whoa, you guys are too good. We're quitting. We're going up." I mean, that just doesn't happen. But the reality is, competition is getting tougher. But the primary driver of that is the internet, because it's fundamentally changed how we sell and how we serve. Let's use automotive. I used that earlier. Let's use automotive as an example. I do some work with BMW in Europe, and it used to be 6 years ago that the average consumer would make almost 7 visits to dealerships before making a purchase decision. For BMW, they would visit the Mercedes dealership and the BMW dealership and Audi and maybe another, and then you go back and drive another one more time, and then you make a decision. Now that's dropped to 1.6 visits.
Oh my word.
Now that's dramatic in 6 years. The reason, though, is because we no longer have to go to the dealership for information. I can Google it and find out everything I want to know about the 3 Series BMW and all the competitive levels, cars at that level, from Audi and all the Mercedes and all the other competitors with BMW. So why do I need to go to the dealership and get hassled when I can pull out my phone and get all the information? And so the competitor now has the ability, if they're able to break through the clutter online, to drive sales, because the whole nature of competition has changed. part of what I'm suggesting there is, instead of providing information, we need to look at how we deliver wisdom to our clients. We've gone from the need to give information to the need to give insight. And that's a sea change. You know, think of all the questions that brings up. You know, what do we do online to deliver both information and insight? What do we do online to be able to attract, to be known as a source of insight as well as information? How do we train our salespeople so that they're delivering something that they've never been educated to deliver before? The ramifications of that are monumental, but it's something that most of the businesses that I'm dealing with really haven't explored in depth. Third one is kind of a easy one, but a fun one. When I was growing up in Indiana, my mom always taught me that familiarity breeds contempt, right? We heard that forever. Familiarity breeds contempt. And then I realized, with all due respect to Mom, okay,
just putting that out there.
Other than that, I want to make sure I mention that when she watches this. It ain't true. Sorry, Mom, but familiarity does not breed contempt.
Okay.
If you and I do business for a long period of time, I don't start holding you in scorn because we've worked together. Familiarity breeds complacency. The longer that I've done business with you, the greater the likelihood is I'll start taking your products and services for granted. And the inverse is true as well. The longer I've been your customer, the greater the likelihood is you'll start taking me for granted. Oh, he's bought from us for 5 years, and so we can just mark that down. He'll be back for 6. And for some strange reason, the aha moment for me as I was working on this was, it seems like every company that I had been working with was talking about how do we go out and acquire new customers. No one was working on retention. They were working on acquisition. And even if they gave lip service to retention, there was no retention strategy planned with the passion and precision of the acquisition strategy. And so when you put those three together, right, our best customers are taking us for granted, and we're taking them for granted too. And we're providing information, and what customers are really looking for is insight. And we're copying our competitor, and they're copying us, diluting any meaningful differentiation we have in the marketplace. You've really created a collapse of distinction. It's pulled you back to the pack like a magnet, and just makes you the same as all your competitors, increasing the likelihood of the customer can't tell the difference between you and your competition.
Just as an aside, I hope that everybody who's watching just took a copious amount of notes, because that was a really great blueprint. So let's transition from the destroyers of differentiation into, in your new book, Create Distinction, into the four cornerstones of distinction. And then what I love about this book is how you summarize all that, and then talk about how to then serve that up to your customer in the form of a story. Okay. So tell us about the four cornerstones.
Okay. You know, and one of the things, Stephen, when I was researching and working on the book, there was a part where I hit a wall. Just like in a marathon, you hit a wall, because I thought, wow, you know, this is so obvious. But then the other blinding flash of the obvious was, many organizations aren't doing it. You know, there's not a knowledge gap, there's a do gap. You know, this is what we know, and here's what we're executing, and the gap is there. But the second thing that surprised me was that even though these were four qualities that most of us would go, oh yeah, I know that, the distinctive organizations used it in that particular order. That was the surprise, was that there was a thread that first you start here, and then you go here, and then, you know, and so before we reveal what the four are, that was the shock to me, that here's where you start, and here's the order. So the first one was clarity. Now, it's not going to be you know, people aren't stopping to hear that again. You know, gee, I never heard, wow, no, I want to be generic. Imagine that, clarity, wow. You know, I realize that's, you know, but if you think about it, the extraordinary organizations are absolutely clear about where their flag is planted in the ground. And the critical reason for that is you can't differentiate what you can't define. If I can't be absolutely clear about what sets me apart, then how do I, as a leader of an organization, communicate that to my colleagues, my internal customers? And how do those internal customers then communicate that to the world the external customers. I can't communicate it if, and I mentioned earlier about the book Good to Great. That, you know, for years I'd travel and people would be pontificating about some of the things from Good to Great. And there's so much in that book that is excellent, it's extraordinary. Yeah. But the line about the people on the bus are more important than where the bus is going makes me want to bang my head against the wall. You're one of the right people. Would you get on a bus if you didn't know where the hell it was going? Good people don't get on a bus if they don't know where the bus is going. You can't get the right people in the right seats if they don't know where this thing's going. I wouldn't get on a bus that said, you know, somewhere. Right? I want to know where the bus is going.
Somewhere, but it's going to be a great ride.
Oh, it's going to be a great ride if we can just get these good people on the seats. Well, how do you get the good people on the seats if they don't know the direction that they're heading? Look at these distinctive companies, whether we're talking Apple or Oracle or Cisco or other ones in tech, or you can look at Southwest Airlines in transportation, these ones that have become cliches. Nordstrom attracts better people than Walmart. Why? Because the service level and what Nordstrom does is so crystal clear that it attracts the type of internal customers that you want.
The people who want to help represent that.
Absolutely. And also because they know what they're representing. That the distinction builds upon itself, but it begins with clarity. Southwest was absolutely clear about what kind of airline they are and what kind of airline they are not going to be. You may not like it. Man, if I want to fly in first class, Southwest is not the one to pick. And you know what? They're fine with that. Yeah. You know, you got to be willing, because clarity is not just what you are, it's what you're not. And that's where we see so many businesses failing. They can say, oh, we're this, but then a customer says, oh, well, we better do that too. We can't say no to it. But then you know, it's the old cliche, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that's what we tend to do in business, is we want to me too our way. And the distinctive organizations begin with that clarity. This is who we are. This is what we're not. And there's one of the examples in the book is Starbucks was suffering from a decline in same-store sales. But ironically, it exactly matched the addition of new non-coffee product lines. When they started adding music and hot sandwiches and everything else, you know, it used to be my Starbucks smelled like coffee. Now it smells like McDonald's in the morning, you know, because they're doing, and there was that erosion. When the former CEO, Howard Schultz, came back, one of the things he said to the Wall Street Journal is, over the years we kind of lost our way. And if you look at what he's done in terms of new product lines, new additions, it's been either coffee-based or it's certainly been drink-based. It hasn't been trying to get away from, you know, to expand the Starbucks brand. So that clarity is critical. Then creativity was second. Now, that was a surprise to me, because I've been to so many meetings where we're going to think outside the box and we're going to get creative. And I was speaking overseas, and I was at a museum, and all of a sudden it dawned on me that a sculptor didn't sit down to do this incredible sculpture, and oh wow, a painting fell out. Right? The most highly creative artists begin with clarity, not creativity. Yeah. The sculptor begins with this block of granite or stone, and then from that gets creative. But you begin with the clarity of this is what I am. A songwriter doesn't all of a sudden have a novel. It's not that they think outside the box, and you begin first. The most creative people in the world begin with clarity, and then creativity comes second. So the creativity has to be grounded in the clarity. The real surprise here was, it only takes one thing. We have tended to think you have to be creative from A to Z, which then gives us the excuse to say, oh, I'm not creative. Right? We're not a creative organization. You don't have to be creative about everything. Be creative about one thing. Enterprise rental car is an example I use in the book. The Ford I get from Avis is identical to the Ford that I get from Enterprise. Sure. Here's an industry with zero product differentiation. The cars are the same. There's nothing they can do to vary what the end product is going to be. So what did Enterprise do? Well, they started out being a price play, right? And when they first started in St. Louis, they were going to be cheaper than everybody else. And then the Taylor family realized that's not a good long-term competitive strategy. So what did they do? They made a list of every single point of contact with the customer. They picked one, how do you get the car? How does the customer access the product? They just flipped it upside down.
Yep.
At Enterprise, we pick you up. And now, with the same product, they're the dominant player in that industry. Because being creative about one thing can make all the difference in the world. That leads to the third that we were talking about earlier, the third of the cornerstones, which is communication. Now, gee, wow, we need to communicate. You know, what management consultant has said that before? And the answer is all of them. Okay, I mean that's nothing new.
Yeah, no way says create this distinction and then don't tell
Yeah,
us.
yeah, keep it a secret for God's sake. Whatever you do, you know. And the power we found in communication was the power of story. It's not, you know, buying more ads and communicating more. It's using story. Here was the breakthrough moment for me. My home school in a very small town in southern Indiana called and said, would you come back and speak to the teachers?
Awesome.
It was so cool. You know, we're going to kick off the school year. We want you to come back and speak to the teachers. Well, I was thrilled to be asked, but I was terrified to do it because my third grade teacher was still teaching. Right? It's like, oh my gosh. And I had such a crush on her. I mean, she was 22 years old. She was the cutest little thing. I mean, in the third grade, I just worshiped her. And I'm like, oh, wow. So I go back and I walk in, and she's 65 now, you know, and she starts laughing at me because the image she has, right, is the 8-year-old kid that she taught. And it was so great,
awesome.
right? Well, I'm nervous to get up in front. Okay, I don't care what you've done in life. You stand up in front of your third grade teacher, you're a third grader all over again, you know, so I'm nervous. And so I'd prepared a question. You know, good speaking technique, right? Start with a question, get the audience involved, but you only ask a question for which you already know the answer, right? So here's my setup question.
Okay.
Let's begin by you teachers telling me what the single biggest problem in education is today, so we can talk about what your problems are, right? So but I know what the answers are going to be, right? What would a teacher say? Discipline of the kids, funding for educational programs, drug, alcohol, violence problems in the schools, getting parents more involved, right? I'm prepared on each of those four. I'm ready. And my third grade teacher says, biggest problem in education today is Sesame Street.
Like, thanks for the curveball.
Okay. And I went, Miss Ellie, it's a great program. She said, oh, it's a wonderful program. But Scott, who taught you your ABCs? I said, well, Miss Ellie, you know that was my mother, my grandmother, right? She said, for the last 30 years, Scott, young people have been taught their ABCs by Big Bird and Bert and Ernie. They learned how to count from the count. And so they arrive on the schoolyard step, their very first day of formal instruction, expecting to be entertained as they are educated.
Wow.
You know, I just want to say, I'm done. I can't top that. Isn't that brilliant? And so now we have, as a matter of instruction, made stories and narrative the fundamental tool of teaching. Mm-hmm. Well, so this 8-year-old kid now is, you know, you fast forward 30 plus years, if they've been taught that way, they're your customer, they're your employee. And so the way that they learn is through the power of narrative. So distinctive organizations find ways to communicate that clarity and that creativity through the vehicle of a story. Yet how many businesses have really great stories? Well, look at who the distinctive companies are. You know, Southwest has a better story than United. Who would you rather be? We call this a clue, right? I mean, I examined the stories of some of these businesses. Everybody knows the story of Southwest, of Herb Kelleher and Rollin King sitting in a bar, and Herb takes his bourbon off the napkin and draws a triangle on the napkin and puts DHSA at the points of the triangle, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and said if we bought 3 planes, flew them on that triangle, had fun on the plane, that's a heck of a business. Every Southwest employee I've ever talked to knows that story. As a matter of fact, for one of their anniversaries, they even reproduced the napkin and gave it to every passenger. You know, when they served drinks, there was a triangle on the napkin to celebrate the anniversary.
Awesome.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes.
So you start with clarity. Southwest does. This is who we are. Creativity. Let's have fun on the flights, you know, and let's make it unique in that manner. Do one thing different. Because I could tell you a joke about safety instructions on the plane, and you'd go, oh, you were on Southwest. You wouldn't go, Oh, what airline were you on? U.S. Airways? No, no one has ever guessed that. You know, everybody says if you have a story or a joke about that, everybody knows it's Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there was this pilot in Elko, Nevada, and his name was Leon Cutterback, and he used to fly mail from the U.S. Mail Center there to one in Pasco, Washington.
Okay.
Then he realized that there were people that wanted to make that trip, so he would sell the extra seat of his two-seater plane and then he realized he was making more money from the person than the package, so he bought a bigger plane with more seats and that's the genesis of United Airlines.
And nobody knows this.
I have yet to meet a single United employee that can tell you the story of the guy flying the mail. Now, you want to be United or you want to be Southwest? And while United has made money basically on charging us for our bags, you know, the extra fees that airlines are generating, Southwest has proven quarter after quarter after quarter to be an amazing, distinctive player in their industry. Well, they have a story. Now, I'm not saying that's the only key, but if you look at the progression from clarity to creativity to now communicating that story, and you know, there's two things, and I'll say them at our live event, you know, that we have coming up in Orlando. But number one, a story that you don't tell is the same as having no story at all.
Amen.
Every business has a story, and if you're not telling the story, though, it is the equivalent of not having a story. You have to be telling that story. Second is people say, well, I'm not a storyteller. And in Orlando, there'll be this 3-step plan for how you create that story that we'll share. But if you can't do that, I'll guarantee at your local community college or at a university near you, or even if you're in a very small town, a high school English teacher would love to have the chance to help you polish your story. It's not for lack of resources, it's for lack of effort that most organizations don't have their story. And by the way, one other aside, distinctive professionals have their own story as well. How did you get to this position can also help reveal about whether or not you're qualified for the next step. And the story of how you got excited about the industry that you're in, or the story about, you know, you were a part of something and had this great experience with a leader and you wanted to be a leader like that individual that inspired you to, I mean, every individual has their story as well. And as leaders of organizations, it's incumbent upon us not only to develop our organizational story, but our own individual professional story, because these same steps, being clear about what you want, being creative in your approach, telling your own story, are ways that we as individual professionals can advance our careers and our efforts as well.
So let me make sure that I got all of them.
Yeah.
So clarity, creativity, communicating, so telling that great story,
Right.
and then the fourth one?
Is a customer experience focus. Now, there's a little twist in there that many folks can miss, and that is it's not a customer focus, it's a customer experience focus. Okay. Distinctive organizations are obsessive about what it feels like to do business with us. Okay. Not just how quickly do we answer the phone, which is service, not experience.
Right.
There are 3 levels at which every business interacts with its customers. Level 1 is processing. It's the elements of the transaction that I have a right to expect because I bought from you. Right? I mean, yesterday, for example, I was speaking for Sonic and all the managers of every Sonic restaurant in the world. And part of what I told them was, you know, if the food in the bag isn't what I ordered, I don't care how much you smile at me when you give me your change, right? I mean, these are progressive. If Delta Airlines doesn't get me here safely, I don't care how hot the coffee was during the service, right? So processing is the minimum. I mean, it's what we have a right to expect, right. And you better do that flawlessly. Customers don't want you to make it right. Customers want you to get it right. And getting it right is executing at level 1. Now, level 2, once you've done level 1, now you can, level 2 is service. Okay. And service are those things that you do to make processing more efficient and more enjoyable, right? I mean, getting the food in the bag is processing, but, you know, waiting on me quickly and moving the line quickly and smiling and that's service, right? So on the Delta flight, the flight attendant, you know, asks how my day is going and gives me a hot cup of coffee. Now, if the plane's crashing into the ground, coffee doesn't matter, right?
Kind of irrelevant.
Exactly. It's irrelevant. You know, it's irrelevant. I bought a ticket to San Diego, not a chance to San Diego, right? I want that safety part. That's really important to me. But service then is great. I mean, that's what I want, is to be served. But the third and highest level is the experience. Now, the experience is different from service. It's additional. It adds the elements of personalization and emotion. Okay? But loyalty is only created at level 3. You only get loyal to something that you care about. I mean, I love my wife, but if I didn't care about her, I wouldn't make it a commitment to her, right? The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And so if we want loyalty, if we want engagement, whether it's from our external customers or even how do we retain our good employees, there better be some kind of emotional connectivity, because that's what creates the loyalty. But it's absolutely what we're least prepared to do in business, right? I mean, a doctor can become a doctor without taking a single course on bedside manner. Yet the insurance companies tell me that the number one thing that they're sued for is lack of empathy. Gee, again, we call this a clue. If I don't know how to communicate with you and connect with you and deliver an emotional experience with you, then I figure the only way to get your attention is to sue you, because you don't care about me. I've got no loyalty. I mean, so this magnifies itself across every industry, is how do we personalize the experience and how do we create emotion in the experience. And so by doing that customer experience focus, what does it feel like to do business with you? How would you like to be a customer of you? And a group the other day said, "Oh, God, I wouldn't put up with that." You know, I mean, would you buy from you? Would you be loyal to you? Are you doing enough to make, you know, we wrote a blog the other day, and it happened again here in San Diego. I checked into the hotel here, I was staying at the Omni Hotel in San Diego, and the bellman, who I learned his name is Mark, came up, valeted our car, took our name, you know, the whole bit. My wife and I walked back out a couple hours later. He said, "Oh, are the McKains wanting their car?"
Awesome.
Is that the coolest?
Right.
But yet the bank that I go to, we recently moved banks because we've moved houses, so we're in the new area. But I'm in there once or twice a week and have been for a month, and they still don't know my name. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that the bank has conspired not to learn my name. I mean, the bank has decided, evidently, that's not important enough in the realm of doing business. So if a bellman can, and this morning again, you know, he apologized. "Oh, McKain's, I'm so sorry that we didn't get your car here as quickly as I mean, that makes it okay because it's an experience. It's personal, and I feel like he cares. That's an emotion. Where the bank, I walk by the same guy's desk every time, and he has yet to say other than, "Have a nice day," when I'm walking out. And it's generic. So the odds are I'm less loyal to my bank than I am the Omni Hotel. And it shouldn't be that way.
That is phenomenal stuff. So I am so excited for you to be able to share that with our guests at Live. It's so relevant, and you just gave, again, an aside, I hope everybody goes back, listens to this interview, takes copious amounts of notes, because you not only just gave a framework of the 3 destroyers of differentiation, but then the 4 cornerstones of distinction. I mean, you gave so many stories and so many how-tos within that. That's wonderful. Can't wait for you to be sharing that.
Well, let me do a little tease. There's one more thing that we didn't have time to get into today, but I will be doing in Orlando. We talk with thousands of customers, and we ask them 2 questions. What do you want? What are you receiving? And the fascinating aspect of it, and this is what I think will blow people away, is, you know, I started talking to all these customers as I'm doing all these speeches in all these different industries. So I had here's what they say in automotive, and here's what they say in retail, and here's what they say in B2B. It was all the same. There was 0 variation. Because customers blend their evaluation of the experience. So I realized my competition isn't just other, you know, consultants or speakers. It's the experience they had at Nordstrom, and it's what it was like at Disney when they took the family there. And so whatever business that you're in, your competition in terms of the evaluation of the customer is not just who you think it is. That's why I was telling, for example, the Sonic fast food restaurant folks.
Okay.
You think you got to benchmark yourself against Wendy's, and you think it's McDonald's, and it's the car dealership that they had a great experience at, or it's that bellman at the Omni that knows your name, or it's, so you got to benchmark yourself not just against the best in your industry, you got to benchmark yourself against the best, period. And during the program in Orlando, I'll reveal the 6 disconnections. The customers said, this is what we want, and this is what we're getting. Because if the folks representing the businesses in Orlando can bridge that gap, you're distinctive. Because there's no disconnection between what your customer really wants and what you're really providing.
That's a great tease for me. I didn't know that you were going to do that in Orlando. That is fantastic.
We're going to touch on that during the presentation in Orlando as well.
I can't wait
So,
to. I can't wait
that.
to hear you do that.
We're going to have a great experience. I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I'm excited about attending just to hear the other speakers that you have on the program, because I don't know that there has ever. I know in my career of over 2 decades that I've never been on a program where I look at the list of speakers and I just want to sit in the audience and listen to everybody else. This has never happened before. It's absolutely extraordinary. And man, you have put together a cutting edge leading program, the likes of which have never been seen before.
Thanks for that. And thanks for being a huge part of that.
No, I'm honored you'd ask.
Well, I'm honored that you would accept and be able to share your wisdom and insights there. It's just going to be incredible. So, everybody, thanks very much for joining us. We will put out some additional free training and resources from Scott. If you go to predictiveroilive.com/Scott, you'll be able to access those. But thanks very much for your time today. Oh my gosh, it was just awesome. And
thank you.
Thanks everybody for being here. And until next time, bye for now.